What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the chaos. I'm here with Paul. We're gonna be tackling a install on his Kia Stinger today, and it's actually kind of nice. I've been doing a lot of traveling around, covering events and stuff like that, so it's been a while since we've actually done like an install, so it'll be nice to kind of get our hands dirty again. But we're putting intakes on his, I'll let you, because I don't know much about your car, you know it better than I do.
So yeah, finally getting around to a little bit of performance and a little bit of underhood bling, going with some Injen cold air intakes. It's twin turbo, so there are 2 different intakes. And then along with that, I've got some strut tower braces, got those secondhand. They're more decorative than anything, but still, you know,
like you said, bling, yeah.
Yeah.
Adds a little pop when you pop the hood.
Yeah, and then also have some what are called Snorkels to go in the front grille. Velossa Tech Snorkels. They'll funnel some of the cold air directly from the grill area to the cold air intakes and kind of create like a ram air effect.
Sweet. Love it. So it looks good. So let's check out the parts and then we'll get our hands dirty.
Essentially what's getting replaced here, this is just the one side, but removing this brace, and then we've got the airbox assembly, routes the air down to the turbo, down on this side. And then what we're also replacing, you can't quite see, it's behind the bumper, but there is essentially an area where air gets routed into this box. It'll be an open element filter after we replace the intakes, but we're going to basically extend the area where the air comes in to directly behind that front grille. So that way it's pulling all the front air out, as opposed to just catching whatever is left over behind the grille area there.
Ram air style.
Yep, exactly.
Step number 1, and this is exclusively if you're using the Snorkels. So the easiest way is to actually just remove the whole entire front bumper. So I don't think you've ever had it off, so this is gonna be interesting, but the bumper's gotta come off just to make it easier. So we think that's all for the top side. Again, we've never actually done this before, so we're kind of learning as we go, but it was just what, 5?
Yeah, 5 of the pop-out fasteners, and then on the top corners, the plastic pieces actually are just clipped in, so they just pop out. Takes a little bit of effort, but carefully do it from like about the middle of them where the clip is. Pop them out, and then they pull up and then out.
Which of course they're plastic, so yeah, be very, very, very careful. That's why I let Paul do it. His car, he breaks it. I won't feel bad about it. So just by looking at it, there's like 3 of those same kind of pop out rivet kind of things. Pull those out, and it looks to be like a Phillips head screw. And that should be it, maybe, from inside the wheel wells. So we're gonna tackle that now. All right, so at this point, we feel like we've gotten everything basically from the top side. And how many are on the bottom, you think, Paul?
Should be 8.
About 8 of those, and they're not bolts or anything like that. It's just those still like pop little rivets. So there's 8 of those. So crawl under the car and pop those off, and then our bumper should be completely free.
And I'd recommend, if you are doing this at home on a driveway and not on a lift or on ramps, put something soft down so that way you can set your bumper on there and not scratch the lip on it.
If you're like us, you actually might be missing some of these tabs, so it kind of makes the job easier. But originally we were thinking there were 8 of those pop things underneath. There were 6, well in our case 5, but in total you should have 17 of those pop rivets, 5 up top, 3 on each side for the wheel well, and then 6 on the bottom, and then like 2 of the bolts in the wheel well, and that's it. So now we get to struggle with trying to actually pull the bumper off. We have like the bumper pulled out just a little bit, but we're feeling like a ton of resistance from like the top side. So Paul was kind of looking at it, and it appears as though like there might be like one bolt kind of from the front of the quarter panel connected to the bumper. Can't swear by it, but we're gonna take that bolt out and see if that kind of loosens it up a little bit. We did a relatively good job. I think the only thing, we're really missing is there's a bolt down in here. It's hard to see, but you can kind of feel it. And once we remove that, that'll kind of unlock the front bumper from this quarter panel. Winner, winner, chicken dinner right there. Bumper's off. Honestly, that wasn't too bad. So just a little bit of resistance, fight through it, pull it off. But yeah, very easy. The only thing, we're actually not gonna unplug the like parameter sensors or whatever, the proximity sensors to tell you like how close you're getting to something. We're gonna leave that actually plugged in, that harness. If you were going to actually take the full bumper off to do something, probably recommend like disconnecting like the battery when you start messing with electronics, but we're just gonna leave it tilted up out the way since we're gonna be quick putting those little snorkels in and then putting the bumper back on. Here's the wiring harness for like those parking sensors. So we just left that plug in. You don't want it, pulled too tight, but it should be fine laying on the ground for what we're trying to accomplish. But if you did want to remove it, you should just be able to disconnect it right up here.
All right, so this is the stock snorkel, and it draws air from the top. Draws it in through the top, routes it to the side, down, and then over to the filter box. What we are actually doing with the new snorkel here is we are sticking it directly in the grill, so it'll go kind of tucked in there, draw that cold air straight from the front of the grill, and then route it straight to the filter box.
We got the stock snorkels out now, and you're actually going to reuse, like there's like a rubber like gasket. You're gonna slide that off. Just make sure you pay attention to like which side came from which, so that way you can put them on the new snorkels. Yeah, the next new pretty ones. Put the old gasket on there, but it should just slide on. Just make sure you got it oriented correctly. Not only do the stock little snorkels come off and you just use that rubber, reuse the rubber gasket, but you're actually ditching like this entire shroud. So that's got to come off, and there's like the wiring harness, this run, it's like clipped to it. So you need to unclip that and just completely get rid of, ditch all this plastic. With that shroud removed, the hardest part, Paul was struggling with getting like these little clips for your wiring harness, because it was basically clipped to that shroud. But now that that's out of the way, obviously these have to go somewhere, so it provides zip ties, and you're actually just gonna zip tie it to your crash bar. That kit just provides two like real big zip ties, so that cleans up the wiring harness, kind of gets it out the way. So there's just one zip tie on each side, and then now you don't have a wiring harness just floating in the middle of all that space. With the shroud removed, now it's time to put the aftermarket snorkels on there. So you make sure you got your rubber on there. There's like little tabs there where it sits in the groove, and unfortunately they're not perfectly even, but when you actually put them in place, that rubber should seal, so it should be nice and shouldn't have any air leaking out. But so we'll go ahead and get these put in place. There's only 2 bolts in each corner for this one versus the stock had 3. But it just slides into place, bolts it down, and then we should be in business. All that bumper removal just for those 2 snorkels, but now that we got the bumper off, the snorkels on, now we can actually put the bumper back on, and then we'll dive into the motor where we can actually put the cold air intakes on. Bumper's back in place. So now the fun part, we'll just remove like the strut towel braces, and then 1, we're gonna replace those with the prettier black ones, but then 2, that'll give us access to where we can actually get in here and start working on those intakes.
disassembly is going pretty easy so far. We are on the passenger side. There are, first what I did was I loosened the clamp from the air box to the turbo inlet, and then I removed the top of the air intake box, just the 3 clamps, pops right off. And I had clearer access to that point to the 3 bolts that were holding the air box into place, the bottom of the air box. And that's 10 millimeter all around for everything in there so far. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the hose on the turbo. So that way we can go ahead and at this point have everything out of the way to install the new engine intake.
Paul was able to get the stock tubing out of the way. So there's like your traditional like worm clamp. That came off pretty easy. And then I don't know what other style you would call towards the bottom, like where the turbo is. Not sure what style like connector that is, but ended up just taking like the bolt all the way out and just had to kind of continuously like wiggle it. So you had to wiggle it off the turbo and then wiggle it off the blow off valve as well. But once you get that out of the way, now you got your stock trash stuff. As you can tell, so this car is a twin turbo, so there's a little baby turbo in there, just a little bitty spinny boy. So with the new intake, obviously same deal. It's gonna plug up here to your turbo, and then it routes kind of underneath this hosing to the little blow off valves up here, right in here. Do a little side-by-side comparison. So we got obviously the right is our stock garbage, and then left is the engine intake system, and then that new strut bar. So it looks just way better, and it's just amazing how much free space there is now. We got one side down, so it's just gonna be the same process for the driver's side. So we'll get that knocked out and then we'll be done. And with the stock stuff removed, I mean, you can see how much room it gains just by doing that. But the only difference from the passenger side to driver side, so there's like 3 additional nubs on the engine intake. So it probably has to do something with emissions or something like that. I don't really know. But there's one here, an extra one here, and then of course your blow off valve.
So as it turns out, there was another piece that we had to take out before being able to slide the filter onto the intake tubing. So just as you're taking apart the stock air box, up against the not the firewall, up against the
almost where the bumper mounts.
Where the bumper mounts are, right. You have 2 10mm bolts holding onto this fella here, which basically channels the air from the front of the car directly into the box. Top bolt, very easy to access. Bottom one, you kind of have to feel around for. But if you have an extension on your socket wrench, you should be able to get to it, loosen it up, take it out, no problem.
Have the air intakes fully installed at this point. So there's only one little like trick to the driver's side. So we actually had to sacrifice like one of the stock, a little hose or whatever, but just cut it off just because I don't know if like you would, because Paul did get the second hand, so I don't know if it would have probably came with that hose or you would assume so, but either way, it wasn't a big deal. It just, yeah.
Yeah, it needed to be about a 3-inch length of hose versus originally this is probably closer to 8. So I just had to cut it down so that way it would fit.
Yep. Otherwise, like, yeah, not really tricky. You just have to work in between like your radiator hoses to get to the actual turbo to put that on there, but
bust a couple knuckles.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sitting back looking pretty. I didn't do much today other than provide the assist company, but Yeah, easy install, like 1 out of 10, what would you rate it at?
This one I'd probably put at maybe about a 5, 6, just because you got to pay attention to the order you're doing things and some of the tight clearances in there, but otherwise it's pretty straightforward what you got to do.
Yep. And because I guess you could you get this kit without the snorkels? Like with the additional snorkels?
Yeah, the snorkels were completely optional. It's just with it being an open intake element and being in the engine bay, I wanted a little bit extra cooling and the cooler air to come from the front of the grill. If you have a sealed box, you could probably get away with the stock snorkels. I know there's a couple kits out there that do that, but open element makes more fun turbo noises.
Yep. Yeah, and so that was the only reason we had to really take the front bumper off, was because of those additional snorkels. You got your finished product. Looks so much better. Now I feel like he needs like the red filters just to pull off like the black and red theme underneath the engine bay, but man, that makes a world of difference. Of course, with any install, you got to go out and test. So we started the motor, make sure just nothing was rattling, no leaks, that kind of thing. But Paul's actually got himself a Dragy, and although he doesn't have like video footage of when the car was like stock, he doesn't have like the numbers still. So we're gonna kind of compare just the car in stock form versus the addition of these intakes, see if that makes a difference. So although it wasn't Paul's best time, he said, still a blast. So you got to think, one, he's got an extra 200 some odd pounds in here with me in the car. Plus it's damp out, so not ideal conditions. So it still did, I think it was 13.1 was his best. I mean, still not bad considering the added weight and everything like that. But man, this car will surprise you. I've been in it a couple times, but it puts you back in the seat and you feel it. So I was impressed. Plus the noise it makes, like that's probably honestly the best part, is you get where before it was no noise, so now you hear like the little turbo, all those fun turbo noises. All the products that Paul has used today, I'll link those down below. If you have any questions, hit us up. We'll try to answer those as best we can. But I really appreciate everybody watching. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It really helps out. Here at the Chaos Car Club, we're exclusively unexclusive. So we got American cars, Japanese cars, Korean cars, so we love it all. It's got a motor, we love it. So hit that subscribe button. But I appreciate you watching. We'll catch you on the next one.